Hi everyone, this is Lydia Bryce, the manager of Colorin, Colorado. Welcome to our Facebook Live event with Sean Pang. Sean, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Right before the school year starts, it's a very busy time of year, and you still have a little summer vacation, so we really appreciate you taking time to be here today. Sean recently won an award, the Washington Post Teacher of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He was also named the Teacher of the Year by his colleagues at Rockville High School in Rockville, Maryland. So he's been having a great year. And Sean is a former English language learner, so we're going to be talking a little bit about his experiences and how they shape his teaching today. Before we jump into our conversation, we do want to thank our partner, the National Education Association, for making this series of Facebook Live events possible. And we always want to take the opportunity to thank our partner, the American Federation of Teachers as well, who has been with us from the beginning of Colorin, Colorado. So thank you to NEA and AFT for all of your great collaboration with Colorin, Colorado. And if any of you out there are NEA, AFT members, we would love to hear from you. For the rest of you, we would love to hear your comments and questions as well. And we will be looking forward to seeing people sharing this, liking this, getting the word out. And of course, the archive will be available both on Facebook and then on Colorin, Colorado for those of you who aren't on Facebook. So we have all of our housekeeping details taken care of, and we want to jump in here with Sean Pang. So Sean, the first thing I would like for you to talk about a little bit is your background, your family background, and the story of your family immigrating here to this country.
Yeah, so I'm born in Hong Kong, and that's just a city full of like skyscrapers and huge buildings and very little greenery. They say that if everyone came down from the buildings, you won't fit anybody in the streets. So then I came when I was 6, and of course it was this huge culture shock because now I'm seeing parks everywhere and people who aren't Chinese. And the language was different too. So now I had this culture shock of different foods, different friends, different people I have to talk to or try to talk to because I didn't know English. So it was rough. Yeah.
And what do you remember about yourself at 6 years old? What was your personality like? What kinds of things did you like to do?
I definitely went from a very outgoing kind of kid to this incredibly shy kid. I was hiding behind my parents whenever they're talking to people, only because I was afraid to talk. If I opened my mouth, I would sound stupid. And it was just kind of rough upbringing. The good thing was I had 3 brothers. So we would chat and we would talk and we would play and fight, the things brothers do. But outside of that, outside of my family, it was tough getting to know other kids. So.
Well, I think that's a really important point to highlight, that the child that you see in front of you who's an English language learner, you are not seeing a full representation of who they are at home, what they know how to do in their native language. And as you said, you felt stupid. Certainly the question of not being always able to see a child's full intelligence if you're looking at one thing, which is whether or not they speak English, right? And
right.
So that
right.
is, I think, an important thing to highlight, particularly for people who are new to working with English language learners and don't have that experience.
Yeah.
So tell us about what it was like when you started school and had to go and have classes in English.
I cried my first day. I was hugging my brother's backpack, not letting him go to the 3rd grade, because it was tough. I remember having to go to the bathroom was a challenge. I was doing different skits and different acrobats trying to mimic, I need to go to the bathroom. And the teacher would have no idea until I just walked out to the bathroom. And she's like, oh, okay. And so it wasn't until this guy named Jeremy Diamond, he's American, spoke no Chinese, but he just grabbed my hand and he's like, all right, let's play. And so I had no idea what I was doing, but just being accepted for the first time was a life changer. Having one person just being friendly meant everything.
And I think being friendly to someone who doesn't speak the language, a lot can be conveyed without having the language in common, right? You can,
yes.
How you treat someone, your body language,
oh, yeah.
all of these things can come through and make a difference. What seems like
just smiling
he
and being
did for
kind.
you. What about the teachers? Were there any teachers in particular that helped you or made a difference?
I mean, I think that's really both sides. There are certainly teachers who just didn't really take the time to get to know people, get to know the students, and who just wasn't patient. And then there's this other side, the teachers who I admire, and one of the reasons why I became a teacher today, who were just understanding and patient, who waited for me to convey my feelings. And those were the ones who really showed me that I can do this. Like, this school thing isn't actually that bad. I can learn.
So that, I actually have in my notes patience, because I think, again, is something that for ELLs in particular, the impact of having someone who's ready to wait just a little bit longer than what you would need, who's ready to just take a little bit of extra time, give you time to figure it out. It seems like that's really the key to sort of starting to build confidence, to taking risks, and that's certainly something that the teachers we work with who have a lot of experience with ELLs are always trying to communicate.
Oh, yeah.
So it's interesting to hear that that's something you remember
Right.
from part of your experiences as well.
Yeah.
Was there a point with Jeremy or with other friends where you started to feel like, okay, I'm coming back to myself now. This is the kid that I know I am and
Right.
I can be.
Oh, it wasn't until years later. I was in ESOL for about 3 to 4 years. It wasn't until I graduated from ESOL that I started really having that confidence. I was in classes like everyone else. I wasn't being pulled out. And being able to just kind of play and learn and talk regularly with the rest of the class, that was when it really clicked. I'm like, all right, I'm quote unquote normal. Now what can I do to be extraordinary? How can I stand out now? But it definitely took a while, and it was an uphill battle for a long time.
So for you, the experience of being pulled out of the class sounds like that was hard, and it sort of impacted how you felt.
Yes, I definitely felt left out from a lot of the class activities because I was pulled out. And then people would just look at me weird. It's like, why is Sean being pulled out?
Were there other English language learners in your class or your grade that you were with, or were you alone?
Well, when I first moved here, I was in Silver Spring, and it was a dominant African American school, which is so interesting. This concept of a new language, new people, new races and culture, and there wasn't a whole lot of ELLs. I was one of the minorities.
Okay. So over time, your confidence kind of grew a little bit. Eventually, you moved out of ESOL classes.
Right.
When you got into your mainstream classes, did you have trouble keeping up, or did you feel like your English was good enough that you could really kind of jump in?
I definitely could not keep up. Even though I was graduated from ESOL, I still had this huge learning curve, which is where my parents came in. They weren't very familiar with English themselves, but they forced so much literature and books and reading into me. So we went to the library every week just to make sure we get a new book. We got to make sure we read. And my parents would read with us, which is why I was very fortunate to have very supportive parents.
So I think that's, again, another point that immigrant parents, even parents who don't speak English, using an opportunity like the library
Yes.
can do so much for their kids. And I think it's easy to sort of have these check boxes and say, parent involvement looks like this, this, and this, and if you don't meet these things, then you're not doing it.
Right.
But using the library, which I know for our librarians and our teachers who work with librarians, I think you can't say enough that immigrant families can really benefit from the library, particularly the children who are learning English. And also that there's so many things that are happening behind the scenes in ways that parents want their children to succeed. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a big part of your family story, right? Your parents brought their 4 sons to
That's
America to have a better life.
It's a world of a difference when your parents are learning on the same step that you are. And that when they don't give up, you don't give up. And they're great role models for me.
And what books do you remember at the library that you particularly enjoyed?
So I have to be honest. I started off with comic books because it was mostly pictures, but they're pictures that I enjoyed. It was a universal language, this art. So I started off with Calvin and Hobbes, and also Garfield, and in a way they saved my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, again, something that, not starting with something that's really text heavy, having something visually stimulating,
Right.
as you said, the images. And there's so many more than there even were
Oh, yeah.
when you were a kid going to the library. But I think that's really great. Have you read books later on in your life and thought, oh, I wish I had that when I was 6 or when I was 9? I really would have that really would have spoken to me
Oh,
when I was a kid.
Seeing things now that we didn't have before, because we didn't have television. But now that I'm looking at Clifford and looking at these different things from PBS and WTA, man, if I had that, this would be so much easier. But now that we have the technology, it would be so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. We have a comment here from Ruslana, who's a great friend of our project. Hi, Ruslana. She says she likes the comment that you really can't see the whole child. You can't really see the whole child when you see the child in front of you. Laying down assumptions about a child new to a country and getting to know the child is an investment. So that resonates with her.
Oh, that's so true.
As well. And I also wanted to ask if there were other activities in school that you particularly enjoyed as you were learning English that maybe weren't so language heavy, that felt like kind of an outlet for you?
Yes. So because I was so behind in the culture, I just went ahead and did everything. So I played volleyball. And that was a big thing, being active. I had asthma growing up, but like I didn't want to not do it. So I just busted my butt off every day. And I played volleyball. I was in like 4 different clubs. And just being involved and meeting new people really, really helped me see what America really is. It's this whole diverse field of different knowledges, different people, and different cultures and languages. And it was just an amazing experience being in that environment.
It can take a little bit of extra effort to get ELLs and immigrant kids involved in extracurriculars and sports, getting parents involved, you know, having permission slips translated, all these different things. But as your experience shows, it's worth it, and it can really make a difference for a kid, especially if they're feeling isolated in the classroom, right? And they have another outlet and a place to place to burn off some of that energy that they have, just like everybody else, right? So, that's a great example. So as you got older, you know, getting into middle school, getting into high school, was there a point where you felt like you had caught up, or did you always feel a little bit behind?
I think the moment where I felt I actually caught up was when I was in high school and I started taking my AP classes. Because this was the point where I'm taking a college level class in high school. And that really showed me that I'm no longer in the little leagues. I mean, this is something that I'm doing for myself, I'm doing by myself. I'm independent, and my mom's not reading to me anymore, or I'm not reading to her anymore. I'm writing my own essays. Getting that first B, not even an A, in an essay was life-changing. And I think so many times we have these students who think, oh, I have to get an A. A means success. But it's not true. For an ELL like I was, who've been getting C's and D's, to now get B's and A's, that's something. And that's an achievement that I don't think people take for granted.
Do you happen to remember how you ended up in an AP class in high school?
It was Miss Tierney, who's Miss Osgood now, because I originally signed up for something that's not AP. She's like, you're not doing that. You're going to go take AP, and I'm going to help you through it, but you're going to do this. And so I did it, and now I teach English.
That's amazing. Well, again, you know, the power of a friend, Jeremy, the power of a teacher to just, I mean, these are people who, it sounds like, took initiative to take your hand and say, you know, come with me, you can do it. I see you need a little bit of an extra boost, and I'm going to give that to you. So,
quite literally, yeah.
Right, those relationships really matter. I'm interested to know, as you went through high school and sort of, you know, you've had this experience with AP and kind of breaking out, was that a point that you started thinking about being a teacher, or did that come later?
I actually didn't know I was going to be a teacher. I went to UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I was undecided. The one thing I knew that I wanted to do was to help people, just like I was helped. But I had no idea how. So it wasn't until other teachers reached out to me and said, this would be an excellent field for you. And they were right. It's something that I enjoy doing, just helping people who was like me get out of the situation that I was in. Because it made such a big impact in my life, I had to do the same.
So now, today, you are working primarily with 9th graders.
Right.
Is that right? And I would love just to hear a little bit more about what you teach and your kids and what you love about your job.
Well, this will be my 7th year teaching at Rockville High School. And I've taught 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, creative writing, all kinds of classes. But I think 9th grade is really where they need me, because once students get that head start in the 9th grade, they set the tone for the rest of the high school. So it's really important that I'm there for them and really set the tone that this is going to be hard, but there's going to be so many resources there for you. Supports, teachers, anything just to help you get through high school. So just really making sure that the resources that was there to help me is now there for them.
That's great. And you teach English language learners.
Yep.
What are some things you think that you learned from your own experiences that you apply in your own work now?
I mean, just somehow instilling that confidence is going to be the most challenging thing for me, but also for them too. So really just encouraging them to try new things, in little bits at a time. So trying that club, trying that sport, meeting these new people, or even trying this new technique in English, just trying the new things. Because oftentimes they shut down when it gets hard, and that's not something we can do. And oftentimes when they shut down, teachers shut down because it's a whole mess. But then when we start believing in each other, saying that I'm not going to stop believing in you, so start believing in yourself, that's when it clicks.
And, you know, talking about challenges, working with English language learners, it's a challenge, and it's a challenge that a lot of people haven't necessarily expected or had the training for.
Right.
How do you help other teachers not shut down when they are, you know, in the situation of having kids that they don't necessarily have the experience or the training to work with?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think teaching is such a teamwork kind of thing. Even though a teacher might have a student that's not mine, I tell them to bring it on. I'm like, do you need me to take a look at this kid? Do you want me to stay after school with them? I'm just offering your time just to help other teachers too, or to give suggestions, saying, hey, this worked really well with my ELL kids. Maybe this can be beneficial for you. So just sharing ideas, planning. I was very fortunate to have other teachers who do that. So that works well for us.
That's great. And you work closely with your other ESOL colleagues as well in terms of supporting your ELLs, right?
Yep. And that's important. It's teamwork.
Great. What are some of your favorite books to teach as an English teacher?
Oh, man.
And that's English language arts teacher.
Oh, I can go on. Actually, it's some of the more controversial books that raise the best discussions. So, To Kill a Mockingbird, which is all about this race and the loss of innocence, just teaching that to ELLs or just any population. It just strikes a lot of conversation, a lot of great ideas. And a lot of these things that people bottle in, now all of it's coming out. And it's shared between the rest of their peers and classmates. And it's awesome getting that collaboration between these different populations of people.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that's a challenge that you're excited to take on, because I think a lot of teachers are nervous about that. I think they're uncertain about how to handle it, and I think particularly right now in this climate, there's a lot of uncertainty about how do we come through that with everybody feeling like they've been respected, they've had a meaningful conversation. What's some advice there? What is your approach?
Well, just remember, regardless of who is in the classroom, you're the teacher, and teacher sets the climate. Once it's safe, once it's comfortable, you just have to establish this is an environment where you're able to share your feelings and not be judged, not be criticized, but we are going to talk about what we think, and that's what makes a class strong, right? You have different thinkings, different skill sets, and sharing that amongst the classroom just makes everyone stronger.
That's a great way to think about it.
It took me a while to figure it out.
Well, yeah, and you're young, so you've got a lot of time ahead of you to keep practicing that. But that is, sort of underscoring what we're hearing as well. It's all about the climate in the classroom, and what you do at the beginning, particularly the beginning of the year, that sets the tone, then determines what risks students are ready to take in terms of how much of themselves that they put out there. What are some things you feel like your principal or the principals you've worked with have done to help you as you have come up being a new teacher in the last couple of years?
Well, just like how we tell our kids to take risks, I do some pretty crazy things around school. And the fact that my department head and also the principal and administration, they're willing to invest and take a risk in me. Just be open to new ideas and just be willing to take a risk on me. So having a dance, a winter dance, or saying we want to do a flash mob, or we want to do this and that, things that they've never done before. Just being open to new ideas was very helpful.
The flash mob is on YouTube, everybody. You can see it. So that's how I started my day today, watching that video. It's a lot of fun, and Sean is in the front row, so I'm sure they wanted to get your dancing skills out there, famous. So we will link to it, I promise. And speaking of talent, you've got a Rockville's Got Talent thing going on. What's that all about?
So, I mean, we have so much unique skills and unique talents in Rockville. We don't show it off enough. And other schools have done this before, but we just don't have that. So we did something called Rockville's Got Talent, which is this huge talent show. But students compete for this monetary award. But more importantly, all the money, all the proceeds go back to the Journalism Academy. And we help publish student works in fiction. We help publish student art. So it all goes back to the school.
That's great. Well, all schools have kids with talent, and just figuring out how to channel it, how to give them a chance to show it off is really...
It's something that doesn't even require English.
Right, exactly. They can do different kinds of things. So some of the ELLs, what are some of the things that they have done in this? Dancing, singing, all the things that people who aren't ELLs, all the natural English speakers, they do everything they can do, except in their own language, in their own culture. But that's what Rockville is. That's our community, that's our culture. So making sure people are aware of this and making sure we're proud of it, it was a big part in their self-esteem and confidence. And speaking of language, you still speak Chinese.
Yes.
That was something that your parents continued throughout your growing up here in the United States.
That's right. They wouldn't let me forget it.
That's great. And I think that commitment to the first language, the parents sometimes think they're nervous about their child not learning English fast enough, so they don't keep up the language. But I think, as you were saying, you can appreciate it now that now that you're a little bit older.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. Like, which one do you concentrate on more, English or your native language? And finding that perfect balance is the toughest part.
But grandparents were part of the equation for you too, right?
Yes. So at home we spoke Chinese, in school we spoke English, and the parents were pretty strict about that. But as hard as it was, I do appreciate it now because I use it now.
Oh, that's great. I just want to quote from the Washington Post article about Mr. Pang. A former head of counseling had worked with Mr. Pang and said that he had never shied away from helping students through their troubles. Pang mentored a boy about to drop out, helping the student believe in himself. For months, he would come to school for Mr. Pang. So that personal investment of feeling like, I need to be there every day because Mr. Pang is going to be watching and waiting to see if I'm there every day, that's a really powerful impact. What are some of the other things that you've done in terms of mentoring or working with kids at risk who are struggling?
I think starting from even before they enter high school was important for me. I do this program where I encourage, especially the at-risk students, to come at the beginning of summer just to get used to what high school is all about. So we teach them, these are the classes we offer, these are the things we do, and we do little bits of them too, the fun parts. So we do like a crime scene for science, just to promote that. They build their own solar-powered car. And I get other teachers to help out too. So it's a whole community involvement, and that's something that's strong. If you have a strong community, that's the more support we can give the students. And that's the one thing I really want to promote for other schools to start doing too. This communication, open communication between middle schools, high schools, elementary schools, parents, teachers, administration, and ultimately the students, because we're there for them. And if we're not doing these things for them, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's I think a good message for the beginning of a new school year, sort of thinking about how is everybody coming together and
Right.
why are we here? Why are we doing this?
Exactly.
And what can we be doing? I do have a question from Facebook. Maria says, what was the first lesson you learned about teaching ELLs that you wish you had known as an education student?
The first thing I learned as a teacher teaching ELL? Okay. I think the biggest fortune that I got was from my misfortunes. So I think being able to have that perspective now that I had before really showed me what kind of students I'm dealing with. I have students from all kinds of different backgrounds, not only different language and culture, but different family and social income and just things like that. And listening from their point of view and trying to be in their shoes was a huge help. And that wasn't something I had. I only had this one kind of narrow field of view, and that was, this is what English is all about, this is America. But now that as an adult, I know from both sides. I'm an American, but also I'm Asian, and so that perspective was important.
Susan says, I would like to know what advice he has to offer educators about what made a difference for him on his journey to success.
Being involved. I think seeing that same teacher at my volleyball games, seeing that same teacher on the weekend at a mulch sale, even at a fundraiser, that made all the difference. I mean, because teachers didn't have to do that. They did it because of me, and that shows they care. And it's so much harder to hate a teacher who was just supporting you, just cheerleading you in your last game or last match. You're just more open-minded, and you're more willing to accept them. And that's what that's all about.
So it really does come back to relationships, whether it's the peer, the classmate, the teacher, the advisor, the principal,
Oh, yeah.
at whatever level. It sounds
It's
like
not,
that's...
it's the most important, if not the only way to teach.
Well, I think there's so much here to think about, and I hope that it can be helpful, particularly for people who are new to working with English language learners. One of the things that we try to talk a lot about is the can-do approach. Can-do, of course, is used by WIDA, W-I-D-A, WIDA, in terms of looking at what English language learners can do.
Yeah.
But that's the assets-based approach. So what are some things when you're looking at your students? Maybe you have a new student who doesn't speak a lot of English, has recently come, but what are some things that student can do?
That person can. I mean, my approach is they just can't do things yet, right? And so we got to do these tiny little steps. And so we start with what they can do. Even if it's the most basic of grammar, the most basic of reading, we take that. We figure out how to foster that. Whether it's taking them to the library, the school library, or whether it's taking them to a school event. They might not understand everything that's going on, but they're being exposed to it. So first it's exposure, and now how can we turn that into application? And it's easier said than done, I'll admit it, but it takes time, so be patient.
Yep, absolutely. Well, as we're thinking about this new school year, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be thinking about the school climate and how kids are feeling at the beginning of the school year, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. What are some things that you're going to be kind of keeping an eye on, thinking about with your kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think the present and future is just so uncertain right now. One thing that's not going to change, we just focus on what we can do. All right. I mean, I send the message to my kids that I'll be there for you guys, and so is the rest of the school. All right. And so you encourage that, you make that grow. All right. So you tell your classmates, you got to be there for each other, and the rest of the world can change, but this right here, this is our family, and we're not going to change that no matter what.
Well, that to me sounds like a great way to wind down. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything else?
I mean, that's just to summarize, it's just being involved is so important. You don't even have to do it for very long, and there's just so many capacities to do it in. Being patient. It's tough to be patient when that kid is driving you up the wall, but you have to be. And when you do, you start seeing a different side of them, and you start understanding why they do the things they do, and it's doable. So as long as we're patient, we're involved, great things will happen.
If you could travel back in time to that little 6-year-old on
Oh my
his
gosh.
first day of school, what would you tell him?
I'd be like, things are gonna be okay. It's gonna be tough at first, but it's tough for everyone. And so, as long as you don't give up on yourself, things will go the way you want it to.
All right, well, those are good words to think about as we're all getting ready for a new school year and figuring out how we can best support all of the wonderful kids who are in our classrooms and who we, by extension, are trying to help support as well on Colorin, Colorado. I will leave with one thought. I had a colleague, Susan LaFond, who recommended an article from Education Week called "What English Language Learners Wish Teachers Knew" by someone named Wendy Pillars. And she says, many teachers and classmates may consider you as invisible. Rather than wait for the perfect circumstances or for others to take the initiative to see you, it's time to take the responsibility to write, to tell your own story, and to represent yourself. And then she goes on to say, use them to color yourself in and to make yourself fully visible. So this is what we so appreciate you doing today and taking that little 6-year-old, helping make him visible to everybody, showing what that was like. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we want to take this opportunity to thank the National Education Association for their partnership in this series of Facebook Live events, as well as the American Federation of Teachers for their longtime collaboration with Colorin, Colorado. And we look forward to continuing that collaboration and seeing everybody here on our next Facebook Live event coming soon. Thanks again for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.